Hi, hello, happy birthday, good morning, good evening, whatever the time or kind of day you're having. I am so excited to welcome you to the first ever episode of the Proof of Sound podcast, recorded right here in the magic city of Birmingham, Alabama. I'm Reed, and alongside me are my co-hosts who I'll be meeting with to talk about that sweet, sweet sound of the human condition, music. Let's start off with some quick introductions so that you can meet the crew. Kyle Phelps, he's a former hardcore kid, a newly minted parrot head, and a self-described peepaw.
Hey, everybody.
Jake Smith, teacher of books, classic rock historian, and one of the most extroverted people you will ever meet.
Hey, hey.
And Devan Cooley, a certified gentle dude and a pop-punk tech guru who once possibly had the tallest hair in the state of Alabama.
That's me.
Gentlemen, we're here. It's the first episode. We're doing the thing.
This has been a long time coming, I'll tell you what.
It's been, Jake, will you fill the listeners in on how much of a long time coming this has been? How long has this been gestating?
I'm pretty sure we talked about having a podcast of some sort when we were still in undergraduate or college. So this is 6-7 years in the making at least.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. No, agree with that. I have been talking to Jake about music for that long, if not longer. I think that is how Jake and I built our friendship. And a year later, we met this guy named Devan Cooley, who is, again, a sweet boy, a true sweet, sweet boy, but also just one of the coolest dudes ever. And you know, we mentioned the band Weezer, and it took off from there.
Yep, that's all it took.
So if you're looking for a friend, just mention Weezer and you'll probably get there. And then many years later, degrees later, career changes later, we ran into this cool guy, Kyle, over here.
I was about to say, you guys have been doing this for a few years. It's just been a couple months for me.
Yeah. But he already fits in like
already
a glove.
It feels like it's been years.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm so excited to get this done with you guys. Again, we've been working toward this for a long time. If there's one thing that I love to do with these three, it's grab some beers and talk about music. And finally, we've made it into a thing for everybody else to sit in and enjoy. So with that in mind, guys, I do kind of want to talk about what are our goals for this podcast as we set off on this journey together. This, I was going to say 4-legged race. I guess it's like an 8-legged race because we're all together hobbling along. What do you guys want this podcast to accomplish? You know, obviously it's about music. Sure, that's fine. But like, what music topics do we want to cover? What kinds of ground do we want to make sure that we cover each time that we get together?
Well, I think the first thing is just going to be making sure that whatever we talk about is something that our listeners, hey, listeners,
hi,
that y'all also want to hear. So with that in mind, always feel free to get in touch with us. We'll have an email available that you can get in touch with us with. If you ever want us to talk about anything, I want to hear what other people's thoughts are as well. So any ideas that y'all as the listeners have, that's first and foremost on my mind for sure. Yeah.
And look, if you're in 2000, you can email us. But if you're in kind of the current age that we're in, you can comment on our different social media posts and channels. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. You can get in touch with us there. But respect what you're going for, Jake.
Info in the descriptions.
There you go. We're true podcasters now when we're saying info in the descriptions. But all right, so Jake wants to make sure that our listeners are part of the conversation. I love that idea. Devan Cooley, what about you?
So I think for me, a lot of what I want the podcast to be is new music, things that are new to the world in general that we're finding, things that are releasing week to week, month to month, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Things that are also new to us. I know it's like, especially in my case, I'm finding new stuff all the time that isn't new to like any of the three of you at all. And so finding albums that are, classics to some people that, are just new finds for me. That's been really exciting from time to time. And, just uncovering things that we hadn't really thought about from time to time, or artists that we've decided to revisit that we haven't really listened to in years and years.
Totally.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, a big part of my thing too, when I've been listening to music, is not only do I want to talk about, what was released from that year that made an impact on me or I thought was impressive, but what I discovered and gone back to, right? So exactly what you're saying, either a classic album, or even if it's not a classic by like, I don't know, culture standpoint, something that's important to me,
I want to know what the 10th best Rolling Stones album is, and I'm going to make sure all three of y'all go along on the ride with me.
Hell Yes. And to our listeners, if you have an answer to that, please let Jake know. Please.
I'm
please.
dying to know. Is it Voodoo Lounge? I feel like it's Voodoo Lounge.
Kyle, what about you? What is your wish list for this podcast?
I'm kind of on the same page as Devan. I think the way the world works now, there's so much new music coming out that we can kind of pigeonhole ourselves into listening to what we already know and are comfortable with, and stuff just blows by us without knowing. So just hearing new music from you guys, and then also anyone that emails us or sends in snail mail, just hearing music that I don't hear already would be great.
We also have a Pony Express agent.
We're going straight to
look. I teach. Email's still my world.
Hey, no shame. If you slack me about this podcast, I don't know how I will respond. Honestly,
I'm 36 years old and I email my parents every morning.
Do you really?
That's a true story.
What is the subject line?
What I did the day before.
What?
No, not really. It's hey.
That is amazing. I think for me, just a quick thing is that if there's one thing that I love more than listening to music, it's talking to people about music. That is my favorite way to connect with other human beings on this planet. I think it's cheesy as shit, but you know what? We're just going to go ahead and go there. I really think that sometimes when you are sharing why you love a particular song or artist or genre or a concert experience or whatever, experience you've had with a piece of music, it just reveals so much about you. And I don't know, it's just a really easy way to connect some dots with other people. That's what I've always done. It's what I've done with these three for sure in terms of building a friendship. Speaking of that, I think it is time to get to one of the main segments that we'll have on the Proof of Sound podcast each time. For right now, we're going to be calling it the What's on Cue. That could change. Listeners, you'll adapt with us. It's all good. But in this segment, we're just going to be talking about the music that we have been listening to lately. And as we've already kind of laid out, this can be stuff that has been recently released that is hot and that we just decided to check out. But this could also be stuff that was released in, the past 5 years, the past 10 years, the 90s, the 80s, whenever. That we just happen to, put our ears on. This can be stuff that is brand new to us. This can be stuff that we've listened to for years and have new thoughts about. But we're just going to be kind of sharing round table, what has just been pumping through our headphones lately.
Well, Reed, I think I'd love to hear you go first on this one.
Okay. All right. So, guys, if there is one thing I have discovered about myself over the past couple years, it's that when April turns to May and things start to get a little warmer and a little sunnier, especially because we are recording this in Alabama, so really things just become unbearable. The way that I cope with that is I somehow always dive into much, much heavier music. I am not a heavy metal guy. Like if you run into me in the street in like March and you're like, do you love heavy metal? I'm like, I'm like a heavy metal tourist. I kind of go in and I go out. That's not me 100% of the time. For whatever reason, during the summer, that's when I just always find myself drawn to that kind of music. A couple years ago, that was around the time that I decided to pop in Metallica's Ride the Lightning for the first time.
Classic summer album.
Yes!
Ride the Lightning. Trapped Under Ice just really makes me feel that warmth of summer.
It melts me away, right? Yeah, no, I was driving back from Orlando and popped that thing in and I was like, damn, this is the stuff. It's also when I've discovered The Sword. It's also when I discovered last summer how much I love the band Elder. And this summer, I feel like my heavy metal band, I saw Jake giving me the horns. Thank you, Jake. My heavy metal band for this summer has been Baroness. And if you're not familiar with Baroness, they started as a sludge metal band out of Savannah, Georgia, and have slowly over the years morphed into less of kind of this stalwart classic metal, as we would call them, and more of this weird psychedelic hard rock, I don't know, amalgamation almost. They're really hard to kind of pin down and describe now. Basically, their music isn't trying to just hit you with countless riff after countless riff. There is so much more vocal variety there. There's just so much crazy sonic texture that they throw in. And the reason that Baroness really came onto my radar this summer is I decided to start taking a delve back into my best of 2019 playlist. And when I did that, I discovered the song, or I rediscovered the song Borderlines, which was on their last album, 2019's Golden Grey. And so this particular song I listened to in 2019 and I loved it. But when Golden Grey came out, I just kind of bounced off of it. And I think part of the reason is that album is like 17 tracks long. It is a hefty listen. And not only is it lengthy, it's super dense. And what I mean by that is it just goes through several different moods and shifts. The band improvises parts of the whole album, and it can feel very kind of off kilter and off center, to the point where I think when I was trying to listen to it in 2019, I was like, man, I'm just not in the headspace for this. This sounds like something that I need to like sit down with and just really study. And I just wasn't in that headspace. And so I never really paid attention to it. But when I rediscovered Borderlines this summer, I was so enamored by that song. And it was like I hadn't listened to it in so long. I was like, God, I forgot how much I love this song. It is like 6 minutes long. It is just this long build that kind of moves between these just crazy gnashing riffs and this weird like drum and bass breakdown. But then kind of toward the end, it goes into this like life affirming, like, I don't know, you feel like you're like punching through the crust of the earth and you're coming on something, right? And so I was like, oh man, this is so good. I want to go back and check out Golden Grey and see if I missed something. And y'all, oh my God, that album, I am so mad at myself for never taking the time to really sit down with it. It is such a masterclass in a band, I think, pushing themselves to their complete limits. There are songs on there that sound like typical heavy metal. There's songs on there that sound like these weird spacey folk ballads, something that you would maybe find on like, I don't know, not quite like a Modest Mouse album or anything like that, but just something a little more kind of esoteric and heady. There's a weird 2-minute krautrock jam on that album. It goes in so many different directions, and that can kind of sound like it might be kind of a mess. But what I've discovered is that it really segues into each other really, really well, if that makes sense. Like the tracks all really have this nice flow, and they seem to all kind of veer into the same sonic territory. There's so many references to the colors Golden Grey throughout the lyrics. It just feels like such a complete package. If you've never listened to Baroness, I would not say that is the album to start with. That is like 400 level Baroness for sure.
I have a Baroness thoughts.
What do you do? Sure. What you got?
Man, so you said you're not like a huge heavy metal fan.
Yeah.
I am. I love heavy metal.
Right.
And when you're like within the heavy metal community, for lack of a better term, I feel like Baroness is one of those bands that's like, oh, we don't like Baroness.
Yes, totally.
Like the people that like metal don't tend to like Baroness. So for me, I've been in this interesting position where like I consider myself to be a very big metal fan. And so I almost came in to Baroness with like this preconceived notion that it was going to be trash, basically.
Yeah.
And when I finally got around to listening to them, I'm not going to say it was confirmed for me that they were trash, but I could say that they just aren't really for me in a metal sense.
Sure.
I don't know. They don't feel like what I listen to metal for. That being said, I love kind of their more psychedelic elements. I love kind of the sonic texture going on, that sort of thing, which is not something that you get a ton from a lot of metal bands. A lot of metal bands are all about aggression and riffs and, they kind of that power behind the sound, but they don't really give you texture. So for me, the things that appeal to me about Baroness are not the things that appeal to me about heavy metal. So This is interesting that you're talking about this album being maybe more geared towards that, because I haven't listened to this album, but the Baroness I've listened to in the past hasn't quite been for me, mostly because I feel like they're maybe leaning too hard in a metal direction where that's not their strength.
Sure. Well, and I'm interested, when you listen to Baroness, do you remember what album or what songs you listened to?
The most recent one I've listened to is is it Purple?
Yeah.
I listened to Purple just a few months ago, I think. And, it's not bad. I enjoy it while it's playing. I just don't remember much of anything from it.
Sure.
But if they're going to lean farther into that more psychedelic kind of field, maybe that's something I need to check out.
I would be really interested in your thoughts on Golden Grey, Jake, because I think I'm so glad that you said the word psychedelic, because that is definitely a humongous part of that album in terms of descriptors that I would throw at it. I would also say prog is a humongous moment.
Oh, dang. You got me in.
Oh, yeah. No, I think you should try it, because I think it's interesting, too, that you talked about how Purple was the album that you kind of listen to with Baroness, because I happen to love Purple. I think it is their most immediate release. That may be sometimes what I would recommend to people to try out Baroness, because I feel like for me, it rides that line perfectly of metal aggression, kind of, but then also these immediate hooks, these songs that aren't super long. It doesn't go in any of like these crazy directions that are super unexpected, like Golden Grey. I think too with Baroness, that evolution from kind of a sludge metal album or sludge metal band to kind of more of that heavy psych, the album Red, super sludgy, like all together sludgy. That is just growled vocals. Like it is just bone crushing riff after bone crushing riff. Blue, which was the album after Red, became kind of more of this like anthemic, epic kind of metal. And then Yellow and Green, I feel like is the demarcation line that a lot of people kind of strike with Baroness, where they're like, no, they're no longer a metal band. They are out of this genre, screw them, whatever. And I think I just happen, like you said, I happen to be so much of a tourist with heavy metal that whether it's Red, where they are super in that sludgy territory, or it's Yellow and Green, where they kind of sound like a powered up Foo Fighters, or a Golden Grey, where they're going on this really experimental direction, I just love it all. I think the thing I love the most about Baroness is the majesty of it. They just sound like they are coming down on some winged Pegasus out of the clouds to like tell us that the war is over, that the battle has been fought, which is another big, reason that I love heavy metal so much, or I love the metal.
Metal cliche, if we're gonna be honest.
Completely. No, doom metal and stoner metal, and the more fantasy the metal, the more likely I'm probably gonna like it. Honestly, that's just kind of my taste. But yeah, Golden Grey. Crazy album from 2019 that I should have paid attention to. If you haven't listened to it and you've never listened to Baroness, don't go there. Just don't put yourself on that dark path. Go somewhere else. Maybe Purple, maybe Blue. But if you're a Baroness fan and you skipped it like me, don't. It's totally worth your time.
I also think it needs to be said, vocalist of Baroness, John Dyer Baisley, has some of the best artwork in the game today.
Holy yes. Kyle, you are so correct. I've recently, through this phase of my Baroness resurgence, I've been buying their records on vinyl, and what a treat to just sit there. Yeah. I
mean, he can do a Baroness or Caveller Talk cover, but then on the other hand, he can do a Gillian Welch cover. So, it's incredible artwork. So even if you don't listen to Baroness, John Dyer Baisley, check out his artwork. He's the vocalist.
I couldn't agree more. Kyle, you were next on the mic. I want to hear what you're talking about. What's been popping through those headphones, Kyle? What you got? Former hardcore kid.
So to anyone that knows me, it's no surprise that I'm going to talk about the album Between the Richness by Fiddlehead. It came out back in May on Run for Cover Records. I don't try to hide it or anything. I'm a huge Pat Flynn fan. Pat Flynn is vocalist of Fiddlehead, among other many bands in hardcore. The easiest ones to get to obviously Have Heart, the band Free, Sweet Jesus, and Wolf Whistle are all bands that Pat Flynn has fronted. Just an incredible person, incredible mind that is somehow just everything he touches turns to gold. Between the Richness, to me, I thought it was going to be hard to live up to the hype from their last record, and they did it. The last record had some heavy themes after Pat Flynn's father passed away. That the whole album is about the grief that comes with loss. And, he somehow topped himself with an album about birth from this birth of his son. From a subject matter, both albums heavy in different ways, but musically, it's a little more of the same, but some new things as well. Reed, I know you're big into it.
Oh my God, no. And I love it too, because Kyle, I know that you are a dyed-in-the-wool Pat Flynn fan, have been following him for years. I had never heard of this guy up until a couple months ago when I decided to try out Fiddlehead. And I should also say that hardcore, if I'm a metal tourist, I'm a hardcore, amateur is not even the word. I don't know anything about hardcore typically. And I know that Fiddlehead is not a hardcore band, but it cribs from that genre and from those kind of
It definitely lives in that world.
Yeah, totally. And I think despite that inexperience, it knocked me on my butt. I mean, I I think the thing about that record that really appeals to me, and I feel like from some of what you passed me, Kyle, about Pat Flynn and kind of what he's all about, is just and what you were talking about with the themes of those records. It's just the raw emotion at display. It just bowls me over every time. It feels so. It just grips my heart and never lets go. And between the richness of white and blue, it's so good. I love it so much. Yeah,
I think it should be said that Pat Flynn was in Have Heart, what was coming into fame in the early 2000s. And early 2000s hardcore was pretty macho. Not a lot of talking about feelings. And when bands like Have Heart that came around that were, had that aggressive sound but talked about feelings and emotions, they kind of got chalked up to what was called girlfriend hardcore, which obviously is problematic.
Yeah.
But everything Pat has done, whether it's even more aggressive than Fiddlehead with like Wolf Whistle, which is like a power violence band, all the way to Fiddlehead, which, you could say is like borderline like 90s college rock.
I see a little bit of pop punk lineage too going on.
Yeah, a little bit of pop
I think that's why the emotions on the sleeves fit so well with this record, is because it's got that hardcore lineage, but there's also like there's a healthy dose of like Wonder Years in there that to me that works very well for me. That's like kind of my bridge into it. I like the album. I think it's really good. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's like top of my list. But I've listened to it a few times now. I dig it. Anytime it's on, I'm enjoying myself.
I've been Devan here. I've been telling him that when he listens to Spotify, I spy on him because I just like that. I'm a creeper with my friends and what they're listening to. Real talk. If you're listening to something and I like it, I'll text you. Just full on. But
he never texts me.
Oh, Devan, text Jake. Devan, what do you think? I know I saw you today, boy, listening to this Fiddlehead record. What did you think? What were your initial thoughts?
So I listened to this a good 2, maybe 3 times today. It helps because the album's 24 minutes long, 25 minutes long, which is so it's a very easy listen. What I liked about it most was it drives. It just keeps going forward, and like you said, where it grabs you, it just keeps moving. Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't give you the option to like sit back and go, well, what about that? Sorry, you've moved on. And so like that was one of the things that I like so much about it. And you feel that like from track 1 to track 2, because it's just a continuation. Yes. And I think that's them like grabbing you and going like, okay, we're going.
Yeah. Like, one of the best album openers in a long time.
100%. Yeah. I was hoping we would get to that. The Sieg into Grief motif to the years is it starts with that riff. And Kyle too, I want to know, we were talking about how the heaviness, or the first album was so much about his grappling with his father's death and that kind of grief. And then the second album is so much more about the birth of his son and those two heavy themes. I feel like I saw that, or I heard that a lot in Grief Motif to the Years, where I feel like Grief Motif is so much more about, I wake up and I fall apart. I do all these things and I keep falling apart. And then I feel like the Years is about like grabbing hold of that sadness and doing something with it.
Yeah, I recently read an interview with him or listened to another podcast or something, but he mentioned wanting to almost start with the theme of like, I'm going to live with this for the rest of my life, talking about the passing of his father, but like, this is me moving on. Yeah. So, and I think he conveys that 100%.
Totally. Kyle, I also want to go back to something. We were planning out this podcast, and listeners, forgive us. This is our first time. This is our first journey. You talked about, each thing that we talk about, making sure that we have some standout tracks. What is a standout track from Between the Richness to you?
Lover Man, without a doubt. It's such a good track. I will say the first few times I listened to it, they released some singles before the album, and Down University was my jam for the longest. But then something about Lover Man, the drums at the beginning, the lyrical content of it being about his son, like it just all clicked with me one day. And if I only listened to one song from that record, it's that one on repeat.
Lover Man. Love it. Yep. Love it. And if you're going to listen to Golden Grey by Baroness, listen to Borderlines. Anyway, Jake, I'm so excited to hear what you've got for us today.
Yeah. I've got a few. But I'll start with the one that I want to talk about the least, just so I can kind of keep the ball rolling a little bit. And that would be the new Lucy Dacus album, Home Video, which is, so I have kind of like made it my trade almost to just really enjoy that kind of genre of the sparse indie song with the guitar and the emotive lyrics and that a very soulful type of singing. Last year we heard it with Phoebe Bridgers, one of Lucy Dacus's Boy Genius bandmates. For me, Home Video, it's her second full-length album. This is more of that great flavor of just soulful, powerful indie music. For me, it doesn't quite stand up to the highs of her first album, Historian. That album holds a very special place in my heart, especially that first track, Night Shift, where she just soars. For me, though, Home Video is another success for her. I think it's another good album. I think she is very good at painting a picture. And the title of both of these albums, Historian and Home Video, kind of, I think, alludes to what she does so well, which is painting that picture of her past and the events that shaped her. On Historian, it tended to be a little darker, like some of the subject matter of these songs. Whereas with Home Video, I think there are certainly dark moments. My favorite song on the album is probably the darkest song she's ever written. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that one is my standout track from this album. It's the song Thumbs, which it's probably the most sparse instrumentation on the album. Very little's going on musically, but what is going on is it's just this very soft guitar. And it's this song where, near as I can tell, it's about Lucy Dacus and a girl that she is either in a relationship with or is friends. I can't really tell the exact relationship, but this girl is enduring some kind of abuse, seemingly from a father figure. And it's Lucy Dacus basically saying, one of the lyrics is, I'll kill him if you want me to.
Whoa.
Like this devastating, very forward, dark song. It's my favorite on the album because it's just so direct. It's such a gut punch. There's a song called VBS as well that paints a very, for I'm sure several of us, a very relatable picture of what it's like.
I think we can all relate to that here.
To grow up in a vacation Bible school setting. And some of the comments, it's very funny at times, but then at the same time, what Lucy Dacus does so well, she hits you with that emotional core at the end. Like you find out, okay, you've been giving me the imagery and now here's the point.
Yeah.
Which I feel the whole way through. If I have a complaint with the album, her voice is such a powerful tool. She uses it so well in Historian and on the Boy Genius EP. She doesn't necessarily go to the highest of highs on this one. I would have maybe preferred for her to kind of stretch her wings a little bit more. But overall, I think it's a great album, worth checking out, especially if you like the first Lucy Dacus album. If you're a fan of Phoebe Bridgers' Punisher from last year, which fantastic album, my favorite album of 2020, then this album is also going to do you a whole lot of good. Lucy Dacus, Home Video, best track is Thumbs. Hot and Heavy's great. The single, VBS, fantastic. Just a great album.
Yeah. I have not had as much experience with this album as Jake. I listened to it one time when I was washing dishes a couple weeks ago. So Jake is the expert here. I am just, again, the tourist. I think what struck me is that I also really, really loved Historian when it came out. And this one, Lucy Dacus has always been a very, very powerful storyteller, but I feel like this is her most storyteller album, period. It just seems like each thing is such a recollection of her past. And I remember when I was washing dishes and I played it, I was like, oh, this is great. Hot and Heavy's great. And then it went immediately into what I found out was the last track of the song. And I was like, wow, what a track too. But I had it on shuffle. Yeah. I did. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this
that's a whole nother topic. Albums we accidentally shuffled and liked them better that way.
Completely. Anybody else listen to this album? Any thoughts?
I've only given it a couple listens. I don't know if I was not in the mood for it or what. It didn't grab me at first. Mm-hmm. Love Boy Genius, love Phoebe, love Julian Baker. But the big thing that I did take away from this album that I did like, and Jake, you touched on it, the nostalgia factor. As someone who loves nostalgia and talking about the early 90s, any kind of if someone has very vivid stories, soaked in nostalgia, I'm a sucker for that. So I did appreciate that. I definitely need to give it another listen though.
Totally.
Yeah. I think so. I've listened to this album, I think 3 times this week, and it took me until the third one, I think, for it to click. And even on the first listen, VBS caught my ear. I think, like Jake referenced, that hit home pretty well for me. There's, some funny parts, there's some tongue-in-cheek parts, and there's some just really emotional pieces to that song. But Hot and Heavy stuck with me later on, but I agree with you, and I'm not very familiar with Lucy Dacus, but what I wanted from the album was a bit more range in terms of like where the album is. It feels like it stays mostly on one line for the most part.
Yeah, range is a good word for it.
You hit up a weird point in the song in Partner in Crime that I feel like it feels just out of place to me, because the rest of the album kind of falls along the same tone. That one is a turn. It's not that I dislike the song necessarily, but it just feels out of place with the rest of the album.
Sure.
I feel like, but I forget which track it is, but there's a line where she references Slayer, and then the song really takes off.
Mm-hmm.
That part I really enjoyed. I just wanted more of that,
more
like,
takeoff,
up tempo takeoff emotion. Yeah, and it just wasn't there. But overall, still really, I like the album, and like I said, I think it's taken it to the third listen for me to really like grab onto it. But I think I'm there.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a 3 a.m. solo drive in the rain for this one to really click for me.
No, and again, especially an album that is so soaked in stories, and something that I feel like you, from your description, Jake, like you really deserve to spend some time with it lyrically and just let it kind of unfurl itself. You know, it's a couple albums kind of listen. I love a good grower myself, so I totally
know you
do.
I
know, Jake, really quick, how do you think it pours up to Historian?
Historian is, for me, almost a 9 out of 10 album. This is like a 7.5 or an 8.
Okay.
It's still up there, but it's not quite those Historian highs.
Sure. All right, Devan, hit us. What have you been listening to, my good sir?
So my pick is a kind of a strange one, I think, for the one that I've just returned to more often than the rest. And it's the album The Baby from Samia. And it was a 2020 album. And it was an album that I generally didn't think I would really enjoy. And oddly enough, the way I found it was through a release from this year called The Baby Reimagined. And it's the same songs. It's the album turned in reverse, which is kind of a neat idea.
Whoa!
And they're all played by completely different bands and artists. So it's all covers, but they're all completely changed up from the original songs. I mean, she had people like Remo Dry, Bartees Strange. I didn't like the cover album. It did not click with me. But I was like, I know this is not the original, so I wanted to find what that was. And when I went back to the original album, The Baby from last year, I really enjoyed it.
Whoa!
And I'm confused by it because, again, it's not really my niche. It's not been like what I would consider my classic stuff, but I really enjoyed it. It's emotional. I think it pulls to a little bit of the pop punk kind of emo stuff that like I've listened to in the past a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good opening 3 songs, outside of the first song, which is really mostly just like an ambient kind of like intro kind of thing.
If I could just briefly interject to say that the second track, Fit and Full, is like one of the best songs that released last year. So good.
Whoa!
Yes.
Hot take.
I really like that one. It's
Ain't nothing hot about that take. That song's great.
Cold take.
Yeah. It's a weird song for sure, but that one, Big Wheel, is really catchy and emotional at the same time. Limbo Bitch, which is an incredible song name.
You said Wimbo Bitch?
No, Limbo Bitch.
Limbo Bitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Very strange song name, but I really dug it. And then it gets to a weird point in the song Minnesota, where probably the middle of the album kind of like hits kind of like the same notes several times in a row. And then you get to that song, and it's an odd almost closer because it hit points that are almost like Ben Folds 5 in a good way.
Like a lot of piano?
Yeah. It felt like piano pop without the piano leading. It just felt like something that they would have done. But I enjoyed the album, and it's one of those that, like, oddly enough, I've returned to several times, and I don't really know why, but I've just really stuck with it.
I haven't listened to this yet, and from Devan's description, it seems pretty wild.
Yeah. Jake, you're a big fan of
So
this
this is a great album. I don't necessarily want to oversell it, but have you listened to the Snail Mail before?
Yes.
Familiar with that, right? It's a similar vein to that. Kind of that emotive, but kind of sparkly guitar. I love a good sparkly guitar. I'm a big fan of that. I love it when the guitar jingles.
And jangles?
Jingles and jangles and tingles and tangles. It's a good album. I really like it. So it gets a hearty second recommendation from me.
I love it. And so, Devan, I want to make sure that I understand the progression that you had with this thing. So you tried the album itself first, and it wasn't clicking.
No.
Okay.
I tried the newest release. It was one of those that just came up because it had released really recently, and I think the review, because I saw it, I listened to it a little bit, and I was like, this isn't clicking, but there's such a wide range. I know that there's more to it. So I read a review on that, and then from that went, I need to listen to the original to see like what it is I don't really feel from this album. And then I went back after I'd listened to the original album to the cover album again and was like, yeah, it's still not clicking.
Yeah.
But it just made me appreciate, I think, the original album even more. So yeah, it's one of those that, like, I put it back on today just to kind of get ready after I'd listened to it again the other day. And it just, I really like it. And again, not exactly what I thought I would have stuck with, but yeah, it's been one that I've listened to in the car a couple of times this week, as well as here at home. Yeah.
Love it.
Standout track?
I think for me, it was Big Wheel. Fit and Full was really fun. I didn't really want to go with that one because it's the real opener, I think, to that album, more than Pool, but really enjoyed it. It's got a lot of emotion to it, but it's also funny at the same time. There's a lot of like funny, like sort of like kid-like nostalgia lyrics at times, but also like referencing your own emotions and your own shortcomings at the same time. So I really enjoyed it.
Love it. Love it. No, love that, again, something that was released last year that you are now discovering. Again, we talked about it, so much music, so much to keep track of. It's nice to kind of go back and be like, what did I miss last year that I should pay attention to? I'll make this next one quick that I have. And that is the band CIVIC. They are an Australian punk band from Australia. They are on the Flightless label, which is the same label if you're familiar with King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. That is their home label as well. They released an album in March called Future Forecast. And what I have to say about this album, it is one of the best straight ahead, full throttle punk albums I've heard this year. We've heard so much great post-punk from the UK, whether that is from Dry Cleaning, Shame, Squid, Black Midi, all great. And all great, I think, because they kind of take that punk formula and find a way to make kind of a left turn on it, right? Take it in some unexpected places. I think with Future Forecast, you're not going to go into some weird, long, droney bit. You're not going to have these crazy jazz time signatures. Instead, what you're going to get is two guitarists who know how to be guitarists. One is just holding down that rhythm, getting the riffs hot and heavy and fresh. And then you have someone who is just gliding up and down that guitar neck, just blazing some incendiary solos. It is some driving, incredible, just throat throttling music. I've been listening to it so much this week. Lyrically, kind of your typical punk stuff of just, taking some shots at society as a whole, or taking some shots at yourself and kind of what that is. But I feel like lyrically, the point here is not the songwriting. It is just the full band performance and how hard they go. In the car before we started recording this, weirdly enough, we were listening to it and someone was like, this kind of sounds like the Hold Steady. And I hadn't thought of it before, but I kind of feel it in the vocalist a little bit. So if you like the Hold Steady, give it a shot. If you like punk, give it a shot. If you're like, I like my post-punk, but I don't love in all the weird left turns that it's going, also give it a shot. I think it's really, really great. Mr. Kyle.
Yeah. I'll be quick as well. I've got another one by a band from DC called Origami Angel. Its album is Gami Gang. Without a doubt, the most fun release I've listened to this year. It is, as far as genres, man, it is a mashup. Okay. You've got some math rock. It's two guys, so you've got a guitar player who does vocals and drums. That's it. And it somehow sounds so full. But you've got some noodly math rock. You've got some straight up emo that Devan, you'll appreciate. The singer can at 1 minute sound like he's a pop punk emo, almost Reliant K-esque, and then go to this math rock breakdown. It's just incredible. Some of the best song titles I've come across in a while, like Neutrogena Spectre. But that song is a great example. I say listen to that one because it's this sweet pop punk song that at the last part of it just goes into this heavy hardcore breakdown. Weirdest thing, but yeah, incredible album, Origami Angel, on Counterintuitive Records with Birmingham's own Insignificant Other.
Oh, crazy! I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I briefly listened to this album today. I picked a song from it when I saw that you were going to talk about it, Kyle, and I would have never guessed that this was 2 people. That's insane.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
I love music.
Yeah.
So say we all, right?
Mr. Jake, what do you have for us?
Yeah, next one I want to talk about. Let's see. I'll tell you what. I got 2 more that I wanted to just briefly shout out. I'm going to hit both of them real quick.
Okay.
In the interest of time, so we can keep us moving along. First one is the new Japanese breakfast record, Jubilee.
Ooh.
So good.
So good.
I don't think
So
there's too much
good.
I need to say other than just like, do we concur it's a good album?
Incredible.
Yeah, I love the layers of sound. I checked out the previous album when it came out, like in 2017.
Yeah.
And it didn't do a whole lot for me. It was okay. I was fine with it, but it didn't like light my world on fire. This has lit my world on fire.
Yeah.
I knew from track 1, that first song, Paprika. Oh my goodness. Y'all were talking about Fiddlehead having the best album opener of the year. I have to respectfully disagree.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Give it to Japanese
Yeah.
Breakfast. That song is so good. The layers, what she's doing with her voice, that smooth slide up in the chorus. I don't want to try to imitate it because I don't want people to stop listening to the podcast. But you know what I'm talking about. When she first lifts up into that chorus and it just soars and
Yeah.
kind of that martial drum beat behind it. It's just such a unique beat that you don't hear nearly enough.
Yeah.
Especially in like kind of pop sounding music. And the album continues to be good. Second track, Be Sweet, is fantastic.
Yeah.
Third track, Kokomo, Indiana, I love. It just continues to be great, song after song after song. If I have like one slight beef with it, it's that by the time you get to the end, those last few songs start to mine a similar vein a little bit. It starts to get maybe a little bit samey, but not bad. And if you were to take any song individually outside of the context of listening straight through, I'm going to love every single one of them. It's just in sequence, it can be maybe a little bit too much of the same thing. Not bad though. The other album that I wanted to talk about, and I have to give a big shout out to this because it is currently sitting atop my list for the year. This is my favorite album I have heard this year.
Whoa, okay.
That is A Color of the Sky by Lightning Bug. And it is, the best way I know to describe it is if it's like you had Beach House, but you leveled them up in every single way.
Okay.
So it's got that atmospheric, bright guitar sound. It's got that open kind of keys and strings. But the lyricism is so much better because Beach House lyrically has never been... I don't think anybody listens to Beach House for the lyrical content.
I think you're
You
right.
listen to it for
Yeah.
the vibe. This, you can listen to the lyrical content. It's an album of self-reflection about finding the things in yourself that are like not right, quote unquote. This is an album about reflecting on that, about going through the process of dealing with those kind of internal issues, the things that you know that you do wrong, and you're like, God, I wish I could stop doing that stupid thing. And then you have to work on it for years and years. But then on top of that, it's just got this band has such a good sense of when to do what in a song. There's not really a good term I can think of for this, but just they know exactly when to make what sound. When they want a song to be subtle and quiet, they'll do it. When they want a song to soar, it will hit unimaginable highs. This album has just blown me away, and I put it on just off the cuff. I was on vacation last week, and I was like laying down in bed. I wasn't going to go to sleep yet. I just wanted to listen to something, and I saw that this album had some positive press, and I was like, okay, let's check this out. Track 1, The Return, immediately blew me away. It's excellent. My favorite track is actually the 4th, though. It's called Wings of Desire, where it's a little bit more spacious. It's a little bit more open, which gives the band room to really breathe and just kind of like wrap you up in that big sonic hug. Oh, I love it so much. Color of the Sky, Lightning Bug. Oh, my goodness.
Standout track?
Wings of Desire. Oh.
I should say too that Jake texted me and I can't remember what time this was. I feel like it was at night, and he sent me a screenshot of him playing that song, and he was like, "This does good things to my brain," and I was like, "Yeah."
Lightning Bug is that band that makes me devoid of words. Like I don't know what to say about it other than that it's so good, and you have to listen to it. Especially,
it sounds good. That's all you say.
Yeah,
it good.
It good.
It good. Yeah, listen to it. If you like Beach House, listen to it. If you don't like Beach House, listen to it because they might have improved on the things you didn't like about Beach House. It's just,
I would add not only to the Beach House recommendation, but Jake's text. Jake has texted me about this band actually a couple times, and I've listened to it now. I don't think I'm quite at the same state of bliss that Jake is with it. I don't think it's a bad album. I think I just need to give it more time. The band comparisons that I think of that people would enjoy, if you are a fan of slowcore, specifically Low, I think you will find a lot to love about this band. And if you love the super spacey, very minimal Yo La Tengo. Oh, yeah.
Good comparison.
It's for you. Yeah. Mr. Devan. D-Cool, as we call you.
All right. I think I'm going to follow Jake here. I have two bands that I'm not super familiar with, but I gave each of their newest albums a listen or a few listens this week. And I think I have pretty different reviews on both of these.
Wow.
So Mdou Moktar, the first album of theirs that I've listened to, Afrique Victime, I was hooked from the first track. Really enjoyed it. Loved it. This was a recommendation from Jake and Reed. I think they're going to be a lot more familiar with them than I am, but absolutely loved it.
If I can interrupt you for half a second. Familiar with him.
Yes.
Yeah, just
yes.
one
Really enjoyed it. Was hooked from the first track, like I said. It was, I think I gave it a first listen on Monday on the way to work, and it was one of those albums where I was glad that the drive took a little longer than usual so that I got through the entire album all in one go.
Yeah.
Really just enjoyed it. It's just such a good sound in general. Like it's not just one thing that is done on the album, but there's just such a good sound when it comes to just like the chorus of voices at times alongside just not fair levels of talent.
Such fiery guitar playing, right?
Yes.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yes. But I think the track that stuck with me most on this one was Taliat. I really just enjoyed the whole thing, but there's parts of that song that kind of feel cyclical at times with the way some of the riffs work. I really enjoy the album. The other album that I have listened to a couple of times.
Here it comes.
I've talked to Reed about it once or twice. Ultrapop from The Armed.
Ooh.
So I'm not a hardcore guy. That is not my musical vibe at all. And I'm frustrated with this album because I want to like this album a lot. I really
know
do.
that feeling.
There's a lot to this album that like I keep returning to going, I actually really enjoy this, and this is not at all my vibe. This is not at all the kind of stuff that I've stuck with from time to time. But I think I texted Reed, it's like they made an album that I really enjoyed, and then they want you to listen to it on a speaker that doesn't work. And there's so many extra effects and distortions, and
it is compressed to
levels
hell. Yeah.
of interference on top of levels
Yeah.
that make it difficult to listen to, and that's the frustrating part to me, is that I want to actually like this album a lot, but I can't because of the way they did it. And that was what they wanted to do. So more power to them. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Jake's got the hot takes. Yeah, come on.
God, I
what you
love
got?
this album, man. So I think I get the production.
Yeah.
Not ideal, right? I think I've just been so in the weeds with like 80s black metal that like production no longer bothers me. At this point, I could listen to it playing like in a tin can from another tin can 50 feet away.
Yeah.
And I could probably enjoy an album. So for me, the production is not a barrier, but I get it. It's obtuse. It is muddy. It's something. I just really like it. Oh man, it's so adventurous. It's like nothing I've ever heard before.
I will agree with you there. It is truly like nothing I've ever heard before. It is an experience. If you decide to listen to it and you've never listened to it before, go like medium to lower volume, because it will destroy you if you try to go like loud to anything else.
It's supposed to destroy you.
It is completely a sonic assault. I agree with Devan in that I listened to it once and I was like, there is something here, but I've got to like take some distance and I've got to have some time away, because it is just so much for sure. You
like the grower. By listen 10, this is going to be all on you.
I believe that. I will pledge on this podcast I will listen more to Ultrapop's The Armed. Kyle, have you checked this out at all?
I have not. I was going to say I can't contribute at all, but I feel like I need to now.
Yeah.
If anybody on this podcast is going to love it other than me, it's you.
Okay.
Hardcore, but amplified like way too crispy. It's so crispy. Yeah.
It reminds me, I feel like it's going to be like listening to that band, The Body. Have any of you guys listened to The Body?
No.
Without a doubt, the loudest band I've ever heard. I saw them in a storage unit in Florida, and it was just white noise.
That'll do it to you.
Are your earbuds the same? Yeah. Real quick, the last album that I want to shout out, and this one's going to hurt me. It's Hiss Gold Messengers, Quietly Blowing It, out on Merge Records, came out a couple years ago.
Wonderful title.
Wonderful. Quietly Blowing It. You know, it speaks to, I think, the kind of writer that Hiss Gold Messenger is. The songwriting project of one MC Taylor of Durham, North Carolina. He is just so adept at identifying and pinpointing that one part of yourself. Jake, you were talking about how with Lightning Bug, it's these moments where you think to yourself, I could have been better here and there, right? That is, I think, what Hiss sings about so well. First off, let me go ahead and say this at the top. I love Hiss Gold Messenger. I have a Hiss Gold Messenger tattoo on my arm, and it is because I identify so much with his lyrics, both from the way that I identify with his lyrics, but I also, I think, there's a special place in my heart for the music that blends all of these elements of Southern rock, country, gospel, these things that I've never really identified with as someone from the South, that have kind of put them in a new light for me where I really appreciate them. But I think also the thing about Hiss that I love so much is that he sings so much about trying to be a better person. And he sings about overcoming, depressive episodes here and there and being really down on yourself and finding ways out of that. And that is what has always drawn me to his music. I have good things to say about just about everything in his discography. This one is hard for me to love. And I have listened to it now about 5 or 6 times. I pre-ordered it on vinyl, so I own it. So just because I figured album to album to album, he's just hit so much for me. I think the reason that I can't get with this one is because Hiss draws his attention less away from himself, and it's less of an internal examination. It's less of this kind of like intimate portrayal into who MC Taylor is as a person. And he tries to do that really tricky thing where he tries to tackle societal ills, specifically, I think, what we've been dealing with in 2020. And he just doesn't do it in a way that I feel like really speaks to anything. It kind of starts to sound like empty sloganeering for me. There's a song called Quietly Blowing, or not Quietly Blowing It, I'm sorry. It's the first song on Quietly Blowing It, called Way Back in the Way Back, where he puts out the lyric, down with the mountains, or no, down with the system, up with the mountains. And that kind of sounds cool for a second, and then you think about it for a little while, and you're like, what?
Oh no, I immediately hated that.
Did you? Okay, yeah. I just, it's that where I feel like song after song, I just hear these kind of like platitudes where he's talking about income inequality, systematic oppression, hope in a hopeless world, all important topics. I'm not trying to say that like no one should think about those, but the ideas that he presents, I guess I'm just kind of like, yeah, I already knew that, man. You're not really saying that in a poetic way. Kyle, what you got? I can see that you're ready. You're prompt.
Yeah, I was gonna say I too am a huge Hiss fan. But I agree with you 100%. The album's, first off, I thought it was a bit of a bore.
Yeah.
I also think he released all of the better songs as singles. But at this point, I feel like this album, and again, I love the guy. Love the band. I feel like they're like an SNL skit version of themselves.
Whoa.
It's like a parody at this point. Hiss by numbers, if you will.
Wow. I didn't think I was going to come in. I thought I was going to come in and be like, all right, I got this hot take on Hiss, this guy that I love. But Kyle's coming in here with straight fire. I respect it.
It's got to be said, like, if you had told me that first episode of the podcast, I was going to hear Reed Strength talk down a Hiss Gold Messenger album, I wouldn't have believed it. If you said I was going to come in and talk down a Hiss Gold Messenger album, I would have been like, which one?
Yeah.
And how long? But yeah, not for me. I listened to the first track and I was already out. I was like, ugh.
Like Sanctuary, incredible song, but like it came out like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Like it's, I'm over it. And, it's the whole thing, like, Reed, you and I talked about it earlier today. It's a great album. You wake up on a Saturday morning and you're just waking up, making some coffee or whatever. It's a great album for that. But the substance just isn't there.
Completely. No. Yeah. If you close your ears entirely to the lyrics, I think the music is beautiful. 100%. I think it is beautiful. It is gorgeous. It is fun to kind of fall into, but you're not going to find much more else than that. Standout track for me, other than Sanctuary, which I know has been a great song for Hiss. Congratulations to him. I feel like I've seen it on a lot of Americana radio stations. Is Glory Strum's The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. That is the song for me that really hits. It also sings a lot, again, about trying to be a better person. It's more of that internal introspection, which I appreciate. But yeah, Quietly Blowing It, wanted to love it so bad, was primed to love it. It's just not hitting for me. It's the first Hiss album that doesn't hit for me. Kyle, close us out. What you got?
Yeah, I've got one more. Again, I'll keep it short. Charlie Martin. He's half of the band Howdy, spelled Hovvdy, like the Witch movie. I'm not a fan of it. Yeah, Charlie Martin's incredible. He's from Texas. If you've listened to Howdy at all, they've released 3 of my favorite albums from the last 3 years. They released Heavy Lifter last year, 2019, incredible album. Cranberry in 2018, and then Taster in 2017. Probably the band in the last 5 years that I've fallen the most in love with. It's like you were saying earlier, Jake, very stripped down instrumentally, but it's just something about it. It just feels like it's always been there. It's incredible. This particular album is called Imaginary People because he basically created a town and created all the citizens of the town, and in each track is the name of someone else in the town, with the standout track being Madison, a childhood best friend. It's kind of like the book that some of us had to read in school called the Spoon River Anthology. It makes me think about that with an entire town created just for this album.
Wow.
Yeah. But for real, check it out. It's usually when I sit down to work in the morning, 8:30 in the morning, it's a quiet morning, I throw this album on. It's incredible.
I will definitely have to check that out. That sounds fascinating. Sounds like we've got 2 good storyteller albums between Lucy Dacus and it's
Charlie Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Imaginary People.
Love it. All right, so we have discussed some of the music that we have been playing lately. Again, new stuff, old stuff, new stuff that's old to us, old stuff that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I am now proud to present the title track of our first episode of the Proof of Sound podcast. So for our listeners who, all of you are new, the title track is where we will kind of focus on one main discussion topic for the episode. This could be an album review. This could be a artist deep discography dive. This could be a guest interview. This could just be a random topic that we have thought about as music listeners that we want to talk about. But this week, given that this is the first episode of the Proof of Sound podcast, I thought it'd be interesting to explore our musical origins, our musical ground zeros, if you will. And let me explain what I mean by that a little bit. I mean the point in which the 4 of us were listening to an album, a song, an artist, had a moment with music that brought it from, just something that soundtracks a Super Bowl ad or something that you play in the car to just kind of pass the time, to something that I think you create an emotional and intimate experience with, where you can realize that music really does maybe define a part of your life or can define a part of your life for sure. So we've each kind of thought about this, and now we're going to bare our souls to you in terms of when our musical journeys as dedicated, obsessive listeners really started. So, gentlemen, I know that Kyle does not want to go first. He's told me. But what about you two?
I'm a shy boy.
He's a shy boy. It's okay.
Of course I have to jump
Former
in, right?
hardcore kid. Jake.
Yeah, the musical origin story, like what a topic for like the first episode, right? Every music podcast needs its musical origin story.
Yeah.
This is ours. Okay.
Planting the seed.
Yeah, we're planting a seed. I don't know what that means, but we're doing it. So for me, I think when you think about a musical origin story, obviously, like I could go in and I could recount like all the music that I listened to at like age 5, 6, 7 that I enjoyed. But unless you're wanting to hear like me recount tales of like NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, and you're probably not going to enjoy that conversation too much. But where I start with music is in the 5th grade. Okay. I think where my origin is. And I'd be interested to know too, like where y'all first began, if like 5th grade was unusually late for me, or if I was earlier, if that's about normal. But for me, what started my fascination with music, and it's something that I'm willing to bet somebody that's listening to this podcast had a very similar experience, is when I was in 5th grade, went on a trip to Walt Disney World. And on that trip, we went to 2 of the different Disney parks. First was the Magic Kingdom, awesome park. The second one we went to, though, was at the time called Disney MGM Studios. Now it's called Disney Hollywood Studios. But they have a ride there called the Rock and Roller Coaster. And this roller coaster very prominently and notoriously features a very dated version of the band Aerosmith. And I'm coming into this ride as a fifth grader. Obviously, I've just started to hit the height limit for roller coasters and haven't gone much past it since. But I just got to hit that height limit to go on the cool roller coasters. This was the coolest roller coaster at Walt Disney World at the time. Because it launches you at like 60 miles an hour in like 3 seconds. It's so fast. It's so fun. It was my first upside down roller coaster. Just so much fun.
Yeah.
But the thing that I took away from that roller coaster more than the launch, more than the loop, more than any of the Disney magic was that it was soundtracked by this band called Aerosmith that I had barely heard of, other than that they shared a last name with me. I didn't really know much about them. So I loved it. I don't even remember what song was playing on the roller coaster. Like if I dig deep, I feel like it was maybe Sweet Emotion, but I might just be remembering subsequent rides on that roller coaster. But when we got back home from Disney World, I kept talking about Aerosmith. And, I'd listened to, my mom had a copy of the Beach Boys' greatest hits that we listened to sometimes. I'd been given a copy of the Beatles 1 and was kind of familiar with a few of the early Beatles singles. I didn't venture into like the Strawberry Fields Forever section. I was more sticking around the Can't Buy Me Love, Hard Day's Night section. So I'd had a little bit of music education, but when we got home from that trip, all I could talk about was this band Aerosmith. I had to get more of them. And so my mom went out and she bought me little independent group, little independent group called Aerosmith. And my mom went out and she bought me 2 CDs because I wouldn't shut up. She was like, I got to make them be quiet. I got to make them like listen to this band instead of talking about them. The first one she bought me was Aerosmith's Greatest Hits, which came out in the early 80s. So it's not like a complete picture. It's more their 70s output. And in retrospect, not the best collection of Aerosmith there's ever been. They cut out parts of songs. They miss a few key tracks. But the most important thing about that record is it had songs like Walk This Way, Same Old Song and Dance, Last Child, Back in the Saddle. So big Aerosmith hits there. But the one that I listened to even more than the greatest hits was their most recent album. And I told you I was going to talk about this on this podcast, was their blues cover album, Honkin' on Bobo. A frontrunner for worst album title of all time.
I was going to say gotta be one of the best, but because it's so bad.
Yeah. They know. It's winking at you.
It's horrendous. I don't know what it means to honk. I don't know what a bobo is, but that was the name of the album, and it was 12 songs. 11 of them were blues covers. One of them was a poor attempt at a blues original from the band, but I ate that album up. And I still maintain that it is heavily underrated. One of the best albums they put out. Definitely the best thing they put out in since their late 80s output, at least, if not the 70s. It is just pure, raw, bluesy rock and roll. And for me, the reason why I bring this album up is that it established for me kind of this pattern of just really appreciating the origin stories of music and the history of music. And you call me at the beginning of the show the classic rock historian. That's kind of, even beyond just classic rock, just a music historian is how I like to consider myself, and how I kind of frame my listening habits is I enjoy listening to individual records, but what takes an individual record from a place of interest to a place of obsession is if I can fit it into that story of the artist. And I started with Aerosmith. Not only was I putting it in context with their catalog, but they were telling me their history on that record. They were showing me the songs that they listened to that brought them to make their original records. So they cover Bo Diddley's Roadrunner. They cover Big Joe Williams' Baby Please Don't Go. They cover that classic blues rock song, You Gotta Move. There's just so many great songs on that album. They cover Muddy Waters. And I was hearing their history and learning about these blues musicians through this album, and then also learning about this band Aerosmith. And I was already starting to see from the get-go, here are the through lines. Here's how one artist connects to the next. Here's how one artist's records inspire other records down the road. And then I would listen to Aerosmith Greatest Hits, and I would hear something like Same Old Song and Dance with that bluesy bar riff. And it made sense. I hear Same Old Song and Dance. I hear them listening to Big Joe Williams and saying, ooh, I like that. I want to do that, but in my way.
Yeah.
And so as I continued to develop my music taste, when I got into the 6th grade, 1 year later, is when I really exploded. Because I loved Aerosmith so much and I loved the Beatles so much. My mom was like, all right, I'm going to go out and buy you 9, 10, 11 CDs. I got U2. I got my stepdad got me the Ramones greatest hits with like 40 tracks on one CD because it's the Ramones.
It's like 12 minutes long.
Yeah.
And I got all these records. I got a burnt CD copy of the Black Album by Metallica that my stepdad burned that one for me. Started me down the metal train. I got Van Halen. I love Van Halen. I think they're great. And it just expanded from there. And so as I went into middle school, I was all about expanding that story. It wasn't finding isolated bands that were on islands. It was about finding the story and the through lines. I would listen to U2 and I would be like, okay, well, U2 kind of also sounds like this other band. I've got one of their songs on like this mix CD that my stepdad made for me. It's this band called REM. They got this song called Orange Crush. It's pretty cool. Kind of sounds like it's hear a little bit of that U2 kind of jingle to it. Mm-hmm. And so I would make these connections and it would lead to new bands. And then, REM leads to the Smiths and the Smiths leads to, and you just go on and on and on from there. Until eventually, I got to the point where I felt comfortable enough in the story that I could go out in any direction. When I was a senior in high school, is when I expanded even further. My friend William, who I met for the very first time, kind of expanded my taste, got me to kind of branch out into ways I didn't know I was going. He introduced me to Arcade Fire. He got me to listen to Radiohead, who I'd not listened to up to that point. So that got me into some weird spaces. And then by the time I got to college, I was a lost cause. So by the time I met you, Reed, and you, Devan, I would go pretty much all over the place. And that's still where I am today. It started as a single story. It started as the blues to Aerosmith. And it's just become this ever more complicated web ever since then. But it's all connected, and that's what I love about it.
Damn. I never thought I would want to listen to an album called Hunkin' on Bobo, but damn it. You have sold me, Jake. I also never knew that Aerosmith pulled a Jack White, which I feel like is what Jack White always does, right? He covers famous blues artists, and it makes me want to go back and discover. So look at them. They're just great. That's awesome.
Yeah, while Jack White was doing that in the mainstream, Aerosmith slid an album under the cover of 35 years of being a band. So, hey, if you want to.
That's awesome. All right, who's feeling good about the origin story?
I think I'm gonna jump in next because I can kind of riff off of what you were talking about with Aerosmith. I didn't go to Disney World as a kid, but oddly enough, my wife and I went a few years ago, and I now own not one, but I think 2 different vintage Disney MGM Studios Rock and Roller Coaster featuring Aerosmith t-shirts that I proudly wear even to work at the office. On a probably weekly or monthly basis.
Nice. It's a great ride.
It's a great ride. So I think my musical origin story is kind of all over the place in some areas. So I grew up in a house where a lot of what we were listening to back in like the 90s through probably 2002, 2003, what was on the most, especially here in Alabama, was a lot of like pop country music. And so I have a weird appreciation for a lot of 90s country music, oddly enough.
Same, my man.
It's not something that I return to ever right now. But like I'll hear something or just a couple of notes of a song that I haven't heard in 15 years and be like, oh, I know every word to that song. And I don't know why. So I think it started with that. And I think we've already talked about how like pop punk was like my jam for a while. I think it stems from the catchiness of some of the things that, are in that like 90s country at times, whether it's like, Shania Twain or like Brooks and Dunn of all things, even some Garth Brooks at the time. But it kind of switched over in time. My dad, a lot of what he would listen to or what I'd hear, like if I was riding in the truck with him, I grew up playing hockey. So like we would drive like an hour to go to hockey practice and it would be nothing but like 70s and 80s classic rock. And so he was a big like Def Leppard fan and he's a big Styx fan. And so like I have a really odd appreciation for Styx. Just a lot of things that like I haven't heard in a long time, but like that was his jam. He loved Styx. And so like I'm familiar with a lot of their stuff. So kind of all over the place there. But I think that catchiness like drove me towards pop punk, specifically some like Christian crossover bands at the time. And so that was sort of my gateway into music in general, was some of those like Christian crossover groups. Like your I think top 2, at least for me at the time, were like Reliant K and Switchfoot. Like they get you because like they're not overly Christian. They can be played on the radio at the same time, And so like they have a kind of a wide crowd that listens to them, a wide audience there. So, you know, I grew up definitely through like middle school and like high school. It was a lot of that kind of stuff. That drove me a little bit more towards like, you know, mainstream pop punk at times, a little bit of emo, not like overly towards the emo side of things, but definitely staying in that vein. And then later on, once I got to college, I definitely owe a lot of the branching out of music towards Reed and Jake here. They introduced me to a little known band called Weezer. And so and there's a lot of baggage there with Weezer. There's more bad than good, I would definitely argue. But the 90s rock scene was something that I have completely missed. Like I missed it by a mile. And so like I have this weird thing now where I have this great appreciation for bands that are all sort of riffing off of 90s rock music, but I don't like the originals. And so it's this weird thing that I've had to notice, being like, you know, oh, hey, I like this new album by somebody. And like my wife, Hannah, will look at me and be like, well, that sounds a lot like this band back then. And I'll be like, yeah, I don't like them though. Like, and it's very strange, but like, it's this odd thing where I missed the 90s and like some of the early 2000s entirely. But I like a lot of the things based off of them. So like they paved the way, but like those haven't clicked with me yet. But definitely like when they introduced me to Weezer, I had already heard a bit of like Green Day, and Reed and I share a really big love of Green Day. So and Reed might get into that a little bit later, but you know, Green Day fit with the pop punk side of things definitely that I'd already been into, and so we were able to click over that as well. And then from them, that branched out into things like Neutral Milk Hotel, who I think you guys went to see them here in Birmingham.
We did.
Right before I got on that train.
Yep.
And that's an irreplaceable thing that I'll never be able to get back to.
You'll never ride that singing saw.
That's it. But yeah, so like from that, it's been this like really fun branch out to things that are totally like not in my wheelhouse of what I thought I would be listening to like as a high schooler.
Yeah.
Now, you know, just a wide range of different things. Like Courtney Barnett was an artist that I clicked with a few years ago. And she actually dropped a single this week that I enjoyed as well. But just all over the place in terms of like where I started and then where I'm at now, and still picking up new things. Like there's just so many artists that like I've heard like Reed and Jake reference like, you know, 50 times already that I'm like, yeah, I've just not listened to them yet. Like I'll get around to it.
Yeah.
Like you referenced His Golden Messenger earlier. That's one that I have not jumped into yet. And I had heard similar things about the newest album, and I went, I know that's not what I need to start with, so I just have not jumped in yet.
Oh, yeah.
There's just so many different things that like I'm excited to jump into, both for the podcast but for myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it for me.
It's hard sometimes, like feeling like you have to play musical catch up. And I feel like everybody hits that point at some point. Like when I was a senior in high school and my friend William moved to town, he's significantly older than me. Those of you that are listening to the podcast. But it felt like such a head start. It's like, God, he was there when the Bends came out, and now I have to listen to all the Radiohead albums. And it's just, it sucks feeling like you have to play catch up sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you feel, at least in my position, I feel like I'm having to rush through all these albums just to catch up. When in actuality, I think it's more fun and more natural just to feel where you gravitate towards and just dig in there.
Totally.
And who cares if you have blind spots? Like, we're all pieces of Swiss cheese with little holes all up in us.
All pieces of Swiss cheese, everybody.
It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, though, because, you know, sometimes you'll wake up 5 years later and be like, I missed 10 years of this style of music. And it sucks because, like you said, you got to play catch-up. But then also you realize, oh, I have, like, 100 albums that I can listen to now that I've never listened to before. And
Spotify's a great evil sometimes.
Yeah,
you know?
Just throw it on a playlist and put it on shuffle, and you're good to go.
Yeah. No, and Devan, I think too, you know, I feel like you have so much to catch up to, but I think we all do. Like, can I tell you about the Bowie discography back to front? No. Like, I'll get there one day, but I'm not going to rush into it either. I think that's the great part about being a music listening fan. I understand that pressure, Jake, of like, I feel like I need to catch up to the conversation, but it also makes me excited because I'm like, I have so many artists that have such a deep discography that I haven't even dove into yet.
Yeah, we'll never run out of rabbit holes.
No, yeah, never run into rabbit holes. I love that.
Bowie's a great one to go down, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
No, maybe that can be an episode. Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
I will say I can't wait for the Weezer episode.
Dude, oh my God, me too.
We're just going to crap on Weezer for an hour and a half straight.
Or it will be like the misunderstood parts of Weezer, which I'd be interested in.
Ratitude,
anyway.
a defense.
Yeah. I just can't stop partying. Kyle, it's just you and me, man. Who's doing the origin?
I can jump in.
You want to do it? All right, do it. Go for it.
So yeah, I grew up in a pretty musical family, although I have no musical talent. So there was always music at our house. My dad's a Presbyterian minister, so there was a lot of like high church music. And then my mom has a degree in piano and played piano at most of those churches. So there's lots of like church music flowing around. But then when we were in the car, Dad was listening to like the Big Chill soundtrack, so like 50s Motown, and Mom was listening to 90s country and radio rock. So like up until like 4th grade, I just listened to whatever was on the radio and bought a lot of CD singles. You know, you go watch like Batman Returns and then you buy the soundtrack or whatever. But in 4th grade, I bought the first album I ever bought with my own money. It was a cassette by a band called Green Day, Dookie. That was the first album I bought with my own money. I still love it. Hot take, Welcome to Paradise is the best song on the album.
Ooh, I don't disagree with that. That's pretty... Ooh, yeah.
But, and that put me on a long road of pop punk, then punk, and then just more and more emotional music. You know, it was just Green Day for a while. And then Green Day turned into Blink-182, MXPX, those kind of bands, which then turned into a bunch of like Fat Records bands like Lagwagon, Millencolin, Pennywise, that kind of stuff, which then turned into like hardcore and punk rock. And so it was just a long thing. But at the same time, there was, you know, when I was listening to like all these punk rock and hardcore bands of the late 90s and early 2000s, I was also listening to like American Football and the Get Up Kids and Death Cab for Cutie. So like these two worlds just combined within me when I was in like high school, and it just opened up the world. And so we've talked about that a lot is, you know, one band leads to another, one band leads to another. Yeah. But then when you start looking at entire genres and entire scenes, you know, it opens up an even broader world of music. So by the time I got to high school, I was full on obsessed with music, writing for the high school newspaper and that kind of stuff. And like I said, it was both a combination of punk rock, metalcore, hardcore, and then just straight up emo. I'll go to the grave saying that the self-titled American Football record is one of the best records of all time.
Amen.
But yeah, and you know, something, you know, as I got older, you know, I definitely grew out of some of those sounds. Some are still fun to listen to for a nostalgia factor, but you know, I've gotten into, you know, more folky stuff in my old age. I think a lot of that 90s country comes back in different forms. I listen, my family's from Kentucky. I listen to a lot of bluegrass. You know, last year I did try to give the Grateful Dead a try. It didn't stick. Sorry, Reed. But yeah, so much like we've already said from everybody, a little bit of all over the place.
Yeah. I got to ask, you know, you said that you bought the first tape that you ever bought was Dookie by Green Day. Mm-hmm. What song compelled you to be? Was it Welcome to Paradise that you were like, I have to have this tape?
So like I would love to say yes to that, because Welcome to Paradise was on a skate video I watched, but I didn't realize that it was on there till after I bought the tape.
Oh, nice. Surprise.
So it was either, I want to say it was Basket Case.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that's like one of the key gateway drugs into Green Day.
Yeah.
That was one of the first ones I ever heard. And, man, that's a great song. Maybe a little overdone now. But.
It's just crazy to me that I listened to that in 4th grade, and here I am 36, and I can go grocery shopping and hear Basket Case.
Or to an Alabama football game, and they'll play it in the 4th quarter like it's a marching band song.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I feel like that gif of Matt Damon from Saving Private Ryan where he turns into the old man every time I hear it. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I am up last, and I feel like Kyle and I have such a torch to pass, because I'll start with this, guys. When I was a kid, I hated music. I hated it.
He hates music.
I know. That was what my parents thought. They thought that I was some anomaly. They were like, "Who are you?" And I think specifically when I say I hated music, and I don't know if you guys ever related to this at all, but I think when I say that I hated music, I think I hated it when people tried to, I always felt like people, this is like anxious, like 10-year-old thoughts.
That's what we're all here for.
Yeah. I was worried.
That's where we still are emotionally.
We never grew out of it.
The people want to hear them.
Yeah. Voice them. I was worried that people were going to scrutinize me as I talked about my favorite music, or I reacted to my favorite music. I think the thing that I still fear as an adult is dancing. Okay. I feel so uncomfortable dancing. I feel like I am just the most awkward thing out there. I have no rhythm. I don't know how to do it. And so I think as a kid, if anybody played any music that I was sort of familiar with, or if I let on that I liked a particular type of music, they would be like, "Oh, I'm going to play it and you're going to like dance to it." And I'd be like, "No, I don't want to do that." So I just put this, I know it's weird. I know.
Okay, two things.
Yeah.
First off, when you said dancing, I thought you said Danzig. And
Danzig.
I was like, 10-year-old Reed's listening to Danzig? But then the next question is, what were you listening to when you were 10 that you were terrified that you were going to get scrutinized for?
I think truly my earliest music memories are, to most people, I think in this room, like I loved Eiffel 65's Dabba Dee Dabba Die, right? That was my stuff, man.
I don't think I consciously listened to that song until I was like 20.
Yeah. First CD I probably ever owned was Aaron Carter's like Aaron's Party or something. You know what I mean? Like that is how far back I'm going. But that's the thing, is that I think immediately once I hit a certain age, I just felt all this anxiety where people would either ask me to sing my favorite songs, which I couldn't sing, or dance to my favorite songs, which I couldn't dance. I think these were irrational thoughts, but that's how I felt. And so I just completely like banned music from my life, and it drove my parents crazy. And I remember my mom is a humongous music lover. My mom has played a tremendous influence on my musical taste going forward, and she would play music all the time in the house, and I would like shut my door and put pillows underneath the like crack of the door so that I couldn't hear the music. Like I was just such a weirdo with it. And so in around 2005, 2006, I was in 6th grade. So Jake, you were talking about like, when did this start to happen? 6th grade for me, I was 12, I guess. And again, I had established at this point, I hate music. I'm not about music. Don't play it near me. I get weird about it, right? And so one day I'm riding around the car with my mom in Mobile, Alabama, where I grew up. We're listening to 92.1 The Zoo, which is the alternative rock radio station for Mobile. And a little song called "Wake Me When September Ends" by Green Day plays. And I want to go on the record too that right now I hate power ballads. If you ask me how do I feel about power ballads as a genre of song, I hate them. Yes.
That is very dismissive of a time-honored genre, but we'll talk about that on another episode.
That's the defense of the power ballad. Anyway, "Wake Me When September Ends" came on. We're riding around the car. And it's like a 5-minute song, and it starts with that quiet acoustic intro and then ramps up, and it just sounds like fireworks all going off, right?
Did you look out the window like you were in the music video?
Dude, you know I did. I was having 12-year-old boy thoughts. And I remember, kind of looking at my mom, and I was like, again, hated music. I'd established this. I was like, I kind of like that song. And she was like, what? And I was like, I don't know. I just thought that song was kind of good. And she was like, wait, you like that song? And I was like, I mean, don't make it. Yeah, I like that song. Like 12-year-old boy, just like, don't look at me. I'm trying to express myself, but don't look at me.
Then she said, dance to it.
Dance to it, boy.
And shot the ground with revolvers.
Like Yosemite Sam. That's my Alabama mama. So anyway, my mom took this small interaction. Like I said the thing of like, I like it. And then that was it. She took this small interaction, made a mental note of it. We'll say 4 months later, it was Christmas. All of a sudden, in my stocking, I pull out Green Day's American Idiot, the full album on CD, and I pull out a t-shirt with a hand grenade on it. It's the American Idiot t-shirt. And that is my mom being like, you are a fan. You are a fan of this band. This is your lifestyle now. This is who you are. You can't, no take backsies, boy. You like music. That's it. This is who you are. And I was like, no, Mom, I like this one song. She's like, no, this is who you are. And so, I mean, from there, honestly, like she'd be like, "Oh, let's play that." She would find every opportunity to be like, "Let's play American Idiot. Come on. Let's do it. You like this band? Come on, be a music fan." And I would just listen to Wait Me When September Ends. It's all I was interested in until one fateful day when I was at my dad's and I was very bored. My parents had been divorced for years at this point, and I like played video games. I'd watched TV. I was just really bored, and I was like, I mean, I guess I have this boombox near me, and I guess I've got my American Idiot CD. So I guess I'll just pop that in and listen to it. And on that fateful interaction, I happened to slip the paper case out of the CD. And that
my boy read the lyrics.
My boy fired up American Idiot the song, read the lyrics, and was like, "Whoa!" And then I heard the song "Jesus of Suburbia," the 9-minute epic. Four songs basically jammed into one, like they're the Who or Queen.
The best Green Day song.
I don't disagree with you. And
that is the best Green Day song?
Without a doubt.
Wow.
I have an impassioned defense. So I listened to this song, and then I listened to the next song, and I followed all throughout the lyric book, and I was changed from that moment. I remember getting in the shower after that album played and just thinking about it in the shower. It was no longer playing, but I could hear it in my damn head. Like, it was just captured there. As soon as I got home, I was like, "Mom, I need a CD player." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, I need a portable CD player so that I can listen to this album on my own. And as soon as she got it for me, I had this giant Walkman that I would like jam into my pocket and walk around in my neighborhood and just listen very angstily to this like crazy pop punk thing. That album was the loudest thing I think I'd ever heard in my life. It just totally destroyed me. It took my heart and just pounded it into the gravel. And I think when I look back on why that album meant so much to me, I was going through a really, really hard time. My mom was married to this really asshole stepdad guy who there was some abuse going on. There was just some really nasty stuff. And it was just this really weird situation where I think in some moments I would hear him be like, I love you. And then in some moments I would hear him like trying to hurt my mom. And I was just so confused by it. And it felt like this era and this moment where my childhood was kind of gone. You know what I mean? Where it was just like something has been lost. And it sounds corny as hell, but a lyric like "I'm the son of rage and love" made so much sense to me. And I feel weird about that because I think for a lot of angsty kids at that time, a lot of angsty kids now, you hear that lyric who maybe have gone through less of what I've gone through, more of what I've gone through, and they connect to it. But for me, it just it was like rocket fuel to all these emotions that I just had inside of me. And I swear to God, I listened to that album for a year after I kind of popped it into that initial boombox player. I know those lyrics by heart now. I know that Green Day's American Idiot is a cringy listen for a lot of people, but it was the moment for me that everything changed when I realized that an album could just, bring out these emotions in you and bring out these feelings in you that maybe you weren't prepared to deal with, but like are voicing in a way. And from there too, really quick to wrap it up, I think not only did I find so much in American Idiot that I valued, but I was so floored by it that I was like, who made this? How did they do this? And it led me down this rabbit hole of watching every Green Day music video I could, watching every interview I could, reading every album review that I could, reading every feature I could. Because I was like, how did they do this? Like, how do you create this thing out of thin air that means so much to me? And that's a practice that I still continue to this day. It's something that I did with every other band since Green Day, where I'm like, once I get into an album, I want to know, kind of like Jake, like I want to know the story of it. How did this happen? Like, there's this thing that means so much to me, and I have to kind of track it down to its source to understand it better. So, yeah, Green Day's American Idiot. Again, I know a lot of people have a complicated relationship with it. For me, it will always be the one.
I think two things. First off, I'm insanely jealous that when you guys were in like grade school, and you found something that you liked, you could just get on the internet and find more about it.
Totally.
I didn't have that option. We didn't have the internet in 1994. But the other thing is, I do love, out of the four of us, how important Green Day is. Of all bands, that Green Day is the one that ties us together.
It is actually kind of the weird nexus in my life where not only has it brought me to you guys, it was also, I was telling Kyle on the way, it was sort of what connected me and my fiance together right now. So Billy Joe, Mike, and Trey, if you guys listen to this, we love you, boys. We love you. You're good boys.
Especially you, Mike. You keep doing your thing.
Yeah, you keep dirtin', boy. Well, guys, I think this has been the first episode of the Proof of Sound podcast.
And what a first episode it's been.
Right?
Well done, y'all.
Yeah. Well done. Well done. We are so excited to get back together and keep sharing the music that's important to us now, that's been important to us in the past, keep exploring those topics that keep us motivated to listening to music. And again, whether you, go snail mail, whether you email, whether you just hit us up on social media, let us know what your origin point was. What was the moment where music changed for you and mattered to you for the first time in a real way? We want to hear about it. And if there's anything that you feel like we should check out based on the musical recommendations that we made today, please let us know. And otherwise, I don't know, boys. What do you want to say to close it out?
Nothing else to say.
Yeah. Goodbye. Good luck. We love you. Good night.
Thanks for listening.